Good evening, everybody. My name is Wayne Ranney, and I serve on the board of directors for the Grand Canyon Historical Society. And we welcome you to tonight's virtual outing. The Grand Canyon Historical Society, our mission is to celebrate and promote the study and preservation of the Grand Canyon region's cultural and natural history for the education and enjoyment of its members and the public. And just last year in 2024, we celebrated 40 years of existence when the society was started by some pioneer members of Grand Canyon Village. We encourage you to become a member. Our dues are only $35 a year. We are an all-volunteer organization, and we're hopeful that many of you can join us so that we can continue to expand all of our activities like these virtual outings and in-person outings and our tri-annual history symposiums. If you do become a member, you'll get 4 issues in the calendar year of the Old Pioneer magazine, which has a lot of history articles about the Grand Canyon and the Grand Canyon region. So we do these virtual outings. We conduct tours at the South and North Rim, and you can find it on our website. Our website is very easy, grandcanyonhistory.org.
Dennis Foster worked on both the South Rim of the Grand Canyon and the North Rim. He worked on the South Rim 3 different times for Fred Harvey, who back then was owned by AmFac, and twice on the North Rim for TW Services. He worked there between the summer of 1979 and the summer of 1984. He did a whole host of jobs there, including housekeeping. I bet Dennis can do really great military corners on the beds there. Anybody who does housekeeping, you're really good at that. Reservations, group sales, worked in the warehouse, in the retail warehouse, and worked at the Employee Rec Center. All that on the South Rim. On the North Rim, he worked as a shuttle driver, tour guide, and bellman. And so that was just some of the things that he did over there. But schooling called, and Dennis got his bachelor's degree at Drake University in Iowa in economics, where he realized maybe it would be better to go to the University of Hawaii instead of Iowa, and that's what he did, receiving his master's and PhD in economics from the University of Hawaii. Completed his schooling there in 1990, and then took a job at Northern Arizona University at what would become the W.A. Frank College of Business. And he's getting ready to retire this May here in 2022. So pretty excited about that. 45 years of hiking in Grand Canyon has Dennis completed. That's 384 separate hikes, 842 days under the rim, and 472 nights hiking around there. Without further ado, it's a real pleasure and honor to introduce to you Dennis Foster.
Well, thanks very much for that introduction, and also for having me here to participate in the virtual outings. I was a keen participant in the actual outings until the COVID hit, and so I missed those, but these have been kind of pretty neat to watch and to learn about some things from people. This particular topic, at first I thought, oh yeah, I can do some of my old pictures and and show them and construct a little presentation out of it. But then I thought that that would only take about 5 minutes, because I only had a few. But then as I went through, I found that I had about 40. So now I have to watch out for the time, assuming that people don't really want to stick around for a couple of hours to hear me talk about some of these old pictures and then my recreation of them. But I chose the title of being there and sort of emulating Peter Sellers here in that particular movie, where people think he's a lot smarter than he really is. And so I would say that's probably the case for for me as well. Well, to start it off, the first thing that I mentioned in the write-up was that I was fascinated by the idea that there were old pictures that you could look at and see in terms of, how people lived in the Grand Canyon. And then also I could use those old pictures to find particular places. So over the years, I've acquired many books and magazines and pamphlets. And here's sort of a quick rundown of some of them. I can highlight a couple. This is George Wharton James here in and around the Grand Canyon and the Grand Canyon. Those are pretty important sources. This volume here is actually a volume of stereoscope pictures. So these are some of the sources. And here's a few more. These are a couple of books you might be familiar with. This one is matched pictures along the river from a few years ago, I think, matching the photographs from the Stanton expedition. And then this is a big coffee table book by Klett and Wolf that do some interesting matching as well. And I find that quite a lot of people are interested in that. Here's a few more sources where you can find some old pictures. Some of the newer books have some old pictures in them too, which is pretty cool. Here's a few more that are some of my collection. And then here's Shane's book from last year. He's got some great old pictures in there. And so now you can find some of these old pictures in multiple sources, not just in one place. I find some at the NAU Digital Library. There's some at the Denver Public Library digital collection that you can access. And USGS has some nice pictures as well. So some of the various books that I've got. So here's a map of the canyon. The title of my presentation is an eclectic mix because I don't have a specific theme that ties them all together, except that they're pictures that interested me. And a lot of times there were places I wanted to go to. But in terms of this presentation, what I decided to do is structure it based on sort of moving from downriver to upriver. So from Kanab Creek up to the Bass area, the North and South Bass area, the Trinity Canyon, 94 Canyon area on the north and south side where a tram was being surveyed in 1919. I've got a bunch of those pictures. The South Rim Indian Garden area. There's also the Grandview area, the Hant Creek area, and then moving up the river, Tanner, Lava, and then finally a couple out of Nankoweap. So that's the way I'll go through these pictures. Again, it's not a random selection, but it's a selection that appealed to me over the years. So we'll start with Kanab Creek. Here's, and some of these I think people will say, oh yeah, of course I've been there. It's not an unusual place. This is a picture by Hillers of sometimes I think referred to as Scotty's Castle. He titled it Marble Pinnacle in Kanab Creek. It says in the designation 1870 to 1880, but it certainly must be 1872. And then as it turns out, I have a picture that's pretty close. I don't think I did this on purpose to try to match up with Hillers. And sometimes this is the case. It just is, that's the best place to take these kinds of pictures. So that was from a trip I took down in Kanab in 1994. Moving to the Bass area, this is one I used in promo. It's a picture that W.W. Bass took of his wife Ada and his son Bill. And this is between the Shanumo camp that they had and the cable across the river, the tramway. And so I took this down with me on a hike specifically to find this spot because of the background. I figured I'd be able to match it up pretty well. And so I was. It was once I was wandering around on that trail coming over from the creek towards the river, was able to match up the cliffs really, really well. I didn't have some people to stand there. That'd be kind of nice to do, but still kind of fun to do in that regard. In fact, I was thinking in terms of this presentation, I want it to be kind of a fun time. And I was thinking that we could do a little drinking game that every time I say, oh, this is one of my favorites, you could take a drink. But you might not last very long because they all are my favorites. Here's another one from Bass, and I try to include the source as best as possible. It's another one that a lot of people have seen, the wedged rock, and the quote out of the National Geographic from August of 1914, which is the big long Kolb's article. It reads, found on the Bass Trail on the north side of the Grand Canyon, the boulder has become loosened from the slopes far above, rolled down and lodged in the narrow gorge. Others of a similar nature are found within a few minutes walk of this spot. Note human figures, and of course the human figures are down here. And then here is a picture I took of the same spot in 2013. And I can go ahead and just, draw the fact that this part of the cliff there is the same in both pictures. And in fact, you can even see the little dimple there in the rock in both pictures as well. Now, this is an interesting one to me. This is from the Mathis survey, the survey that resulted in those first maps of the Grand Canyon, 1903, 1904. This is probably, I want to say it's probably 1903. And it is often included with an article that Mathis wrote titled Breaking a Trail Through Bright Angel Canyon. And this is actually an NPS reference. It's on an NPS site. And the problem with this is that that story is just about going down the Bright Angel Canyon from the north rim down to the river where they crossed back to the south side. But this picture, which often accompanies that story, is not from the Bright Angel Canyon, it's from Chinoomu Canyon. And we can tell here, this is a picture I found in the Chinoomu Quadrangle little booklet on the geology, and it's titled East Wall of Canyon of Chinoomu Creek near Chinoomu Garden. And you can see that this part of the cliff is the same in both of these pictures. And so it's definitely not the Bright Angel Canyon, it is the Chinoomu Canyon. And then as it turns out, I had a picture that also showed that part of the cliff pretty well just by accident. And sometimes my matched pictures are just by accident. I was there and I was taking a picture of the area there where Bass had these gardens, and you can see all these little walls out there on the little terrace. And so I got this picture, and it turned out to be a happy coincidence that I also have that cliff background that matches with this other picture of Mathis. Going to the South Bass side, the Mystic Springs area is something that's an interesting place for people to visit. I don't know how many people have been there, but it certainly is an attraction. Not that there's much water, much if any water there, but it figures prominently in George Wharton James's book, In and Around the Grand Canyon, published in 1900. And one of the really cool pictures that's published in that book is this rock feature he called Seal Head Rock. And I'm pretty sure he's the one that made up the name there. And I was able to find that in 1995 when I went down to look for the spring. Harvey Butchert had gone down 3 or 4 times before he was able to finally find it. And of course, I was able to leverage off of his experience and was able to find it a little bit more quickly. But this rock, you have to be down below it to really get that view. If you come in where you see the man in the picture here from James, you would come in at that level. It doesn't stand out that dramatically. So it does depend on your perspective. And then I have a couple more here from Mystic Springs. This is, it says circa 1910 from the source I got, published by James, and it is Bass and another man at Mystic Spring. And you can see that what they did was they hollowed out a little bit of the ground there to try and get some of the water to fill up. I'm not sure how much they ever really got out of that. but enough to survive. And then here is a picture I took in 2013, and you can see that these rocks are the same in both pictures, and then this feature here is pretty much the same. So it's a match, but there's not really much left in terms of trying to identify the spring. There are a couple of places there where the water does seep out under the rock, but I'm not sure that there's anything really coming out there now. And then this was another one of these pictures published in the book In and Around the Grand Canyon by George Wharton James. Burroughs drinking at Mystic Springs, which kind of cracks me up when you think about the guys leaning down to drink out of the water, and apparently the Burroughs did too. And then here's another picture from 1995 that matched up pretty well with that particular view. And you can see, for example, this rock here matches up really well with that rock there. And it's a fun place to go and visit. Another picture I thought I would include here comes from Harvey Butchert, and in his description of going out there again a number of times before he was finally able to find it. And the first issue that he had was that it's not where it's marked on the old maps. Excuse me. And so he had to find ways to determine where it actually was. And one of the things he did was he took a picture from a photo album. And so this is what he wrote in his journals, 1972. Quote, "My color slide of the picture in the album belonging to Bill Bass finally came back from the processing lab, and I was sure I could go right where the parallax would be right and find the old spring site." And this is the picture that he took out of the old album to use to help discern where the spring actually was. And then here is the picture that Harvey took at the time in 1972. And then here is a picture that I took in 2013. And you can see, of course, you've got the Mount Huthawali in all of them, but you also have this feature here in each of the pictures to help determine for sure that you have matched them up. Elsewhere on the South Bass is this place, Bedrock Tanks. Again, probably a place a lot of hikers have been to. The trail goes by this particular spot. You have to kind of come back to it if you want to see it, but Bass maintained a little bit of a temporary camp underneath the ledges there. And this again appears in George Wharton James's book from 1900. And then here's a picture I took in 2013. And then just to make this look a little bit more accurate, and this is when I was trying to match up, so I was trying to get in the right spot. I took the color out and just left it as black and white so that it does a better job of matching up with the old picture. And it's also kind of funny, again, if you've been here, the guy is climbing up the logs there. Not that it's all that hard to just come back down the creek bed about 5 minutes and go up and access the water that is pooling up in the rocks up above. Here is the river camp. It's well above the river on Bass. So when you come down, and instead of heading right for the beach area, you continue along the slope a little bit there, and you come to this sheltered area that's still there. This is a picture taken by someone named C.C. Pierce around 1900. And I have a couple of pictures that match up with it again after the fact. Here is the same background, so you can see the background looks the same in both pictures. In fact, we got this little hill here in both pictures, but it doesn't quite go down to where the campsite was. But here is the close-up of the campsite, and I did get a picture of that, and was where it was all shaded and dark. But here is my picture that matches up with the old campsite. So you can see these rocks are the same as these rocks here, and this little crack there is the same as this crack, and so on. So, and of course, you've also got the rock walls there, so you know it's the right spot. It's just not going to look like it did 100 years ago. And then also in the Bass area is the camp in Copper Canyon. And so here is the old picture. This is from 1912 at the NAU Special Collections. And here is the picture I was able to try to match up with it. It doesn't, the picture is kind of small, so you don't get a lot of good resolution there, but you can see that I've got this rock in my picture, which is the same as the rock here. And of course, you can see the rock wall behind, but the idea is to see something that really is quite specific to ensure that you've matched up the views. Also in this area, because I was doing Butchert's picture earlier, I thought I would take this one. This is the ruins at Point Sublime. So, I mean, it's getting to be history, right? This is, 50 years ago. So 1977. And then here's a picture I took in 1983. So not too many years after Butchert took his photograph. And then here's a picture I took of those same ruin site in 2017. And thankfully, they still look pretty much the same. They're not that easy to get to. So that is one of the advantages there, I suppose. One of the series of pictures I was really interested in matching up was of the tram survey group from 1919, the so-called Devol survey. They got the permission to go across the river and survey out a possible route for an aerial tram. And this is written up in the first History Symposium papers by Jim Ullman. And he does a really good job of describing what's going on and gives a couple of maps of what the proposed routes were going to be. And he refers to a photo collection at NAU that I was able to access online. And then I was able to use these pictures to find these sites that are between 94 Mile Canyon and Trinity Canyon. And that would be Shiva Temple in the background. So here's the party. They've come from the south to the north, and this is a big flat spot above the Tonto where they had their campsite. And so I was able to find it, and it did take a little while to find. I was there with Bill Ferris, and we were scouting around, and I kept holding up my picture to see if it was matching the view or not until we finally found this particular spot. And then once you're there, it does seem sort of obvious that this would be a good place to have a camp. This is another picture from the campsite. It is labeled as Slim, Eddie, and myself, Robert Ryan, on North Red Wall Camp. Of course, they're not on the red wall, they're down below the red wall. But I thought it would be fun if Bill and I posed the same way they did in the picture. And we didn't. We were leaning the wrong direction. Instead of both leaning out, we both leaned in. So apparently I was confused as to what I was actually looking at there. But still, it is the same view there from 2009 as it was from back in 1919. And then here's another photograph from that collection of all the men hauling stuff up from the tramway. What this survey party did was they actually built a supply tram across the Grand Canyon so they could get supplies across. And so there is a terminus on the south side of the river, and there's a terminus on the north side of the river. And then from there, they had to haul their supplies up to the campsite that I just showed you the picture of. And then they had another set up with ropes and pulleys and so on to pull things up to the top of the red wall, although I haven't been able to take the time to look for anything that remains from that. But here's the men hauling supplies up from the terminus north of the river up to their campsite. And then here's a picture of Bill. He was gracious enough to let me take this multiple image photograph of him climbing up the hillside to pretty much match up with that. It's not a perfect match in terms of the the perspective, but here's the hill in both pictures. Here is the little cliffs in both pictures, and so everything matches up pretty well that way in terms of where we are. And then this is the terminus, the end of the tram on the North Tonto, and you can see there's a few guys standing here posing, and this was really the spot we were looking for besides the campsite, and we did spend quite a long time wandering around along the edge of the Tonto there until we were able to match up this view and identify that particular site. And then once you're there, you'll see rocks stacked up and some old equipment still laying around. But I had Bill take a picture of me standing up there where the one guy is standing. And then I had him take a picture of me standing in the place where the guy is standing in the middle. But I opted out of the guy standing down here. So that seemed a little too skittish for me. Moving over to the south side, this is the same survey group. This is the terminus on the south of the river on the Tonto. And so what they did was they were able to work their way across, haul their equipment and their ropes, and then fix up these aerial trams for the supplies so that they could move the supplies across. And it left from here over to a hill below the Tonto level on the north side, and then up to the spot that I just had in that last picture. And if you get a chance to look at those pictures, those are really cool. They actually hauled 2 burros across the river here. They were able to lower them down on ropes and swim them across the river, and then raise them on ropes to use them to haul stuff around on the North Rim. Very interesting sort of time period. And here is that same view pretty much with my hiking friend, John Eastwood. And I should have had him stand in front of all those rocks instead of behind, because then it would match up better with the picture. But those rocks are still there, so that's kind of cool in that regard. And then close by to that is a spot where they had some kind of impromptu camp. I think maybe they had a better camp elsewhere. This particular picture is labeled 4 Men at South Tonto Camp, view to the northeast, Cheops Pyramid in upper center, Buddha Temple in left center. And I was able to match up the background pretty well. But you can see there's a lot of grasses and bushes growing here, which obscures some of the views. But I was still able to be able to match up a couple of the rocks. So here's a couple here that are still visible. This is a real big flat one. And so again, knowing that I've got the right spot there for that particular picture. And then one last one from this 1919 survey. It's titled Henry and the Burros. And I went out there in 2013. And I think I only had a picture of this on a camera, and it was hard to see in the bright light of the day, but I did my best to try to strike a pose like Henry is striking here with the right background in terms of matching up with this, although I'm not on a little hillside, so I would have to do a little bit more work to make that a perfect match. Another picture that is kind of a match, although it's a little bit of an uncertainty, because a lot of times when you see things in the trees or in the woods or whatever, you're not going to be able to match things up. I'd like to match up pictures of the Grandview Hotel or of Rowell and some other places, the Hance properties, but usually you don't see enough detail to be able to actually match them up. And that's kind of the case here too, but I'm still going to include this because I like it. And this is from the 1937 Natural History expedition up to the top of Shiva Temple. And many of you probably know something about that and how the Kolbs were snubbed in this regard. And this is one of the pictures that was published in the report. And it reads, a metal dairy can holding 10 gallons of water, which was landed on Shiva by parachute without losing a drop. And the reason I included that is because in 1983, I hiked up to the top of Shiva. And so I was able to get this picture of me next to a couple of those cans. So it's not a matched picture per se in terms of the exact same image, but it is a match in terms of what was up there, at least in 1983. And then actually I'm right next to their workbench, their work table that they had at their campsite. One of the other pictures I posted up late as kind of a promo for this is the one with Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, standing by the railroad yard in 1950. So this was a couple years before he was running for and becoming president of the United States. At this time, he is president, but he's president of Columbia University. And so I thought, well, this will be a nice one to match up because we know where the railroad tracks are and I can just go over there and figure that out. And this was just a couple of years ago. And it's right across from the general office. And I was able to match up the rock wall pretty well. And so I took a picture of me in that. And then I had to sort of erase a lot of the stuff around Eisenhower because the railroad tracks are not in the same space, in the same place today as they were back then. But still kind of fun in terms of trying to match this up with the current view. I tried the same thing with Herbert Hoover. I had a picture, and there's actually it's a longer view than just this image I've got right here. But he's out on the rim, out in front of the El Tabar, and it seems to me that maybe the picture was taken from the suite balconies up on the El Tabar, because you can see down into the canyon really well. And I don't think the camera was all that close to him and then raised real high. I think it was from further away. And this is from 1928. And I went out there and I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked and I could not match up the wall anywhere. And then I read somewhere or somebody said something about how the CCC redid the walls there around the South Rim. So maybe that is the issue. And so even though that wall by Herbert Hoover looks pretty good, although maybe a little short, maybe it was redone. And so we're not going to be able to match up that wall with a current picture. But you can still see the background here is Shiva Temple in both cases that is flush with the North Rim. We got some other buttes and points that match up very well with that old picture. Down at the Indian Garden, this picture appears in the Kolb's article from 1914. It's the Kolb Brothers studio on Cameron's Indian Garden in the canyon. And there were a couple of trips I did where I hiked down the Kaibab, across the Tonto and up the Right Angel, where I was trying to match up with this picture specifically. And this one worked out pretty well from about 10 years ago, 2011. And so you can see the background works out pretty well in the main channel. Of course, what's interesting is now you got all those cottonwood trees, and back in 1914 or before, because that's when that article was published, there isn't really much in terms of tall trees growing in the Garden Creek area. But you can see these tents. You can still see where they were when you're hiking on the Tonto Trail out of Indian Garden, you pass a flat area there that it might attract your attention. And then you might see this big rock up on the hillside as a way to sort of identify that. One other thing that I might point out, well, here is Kolb's place down at Indian Garden where they did their photographic processing. But here is the trail to Plateau Point, and here it is today. So quite a bit different in terms of where it was located back 100 years ago. A couple more that come from this article are of the Devil's Corkscrew. And so it turns out I have pictures of this as well. And I think these are probably taken from the edge of the Tonto that is east of Pipe Creek. So if you come down the South Kaibab and you go out to the end of the Tonto, you can look into this area. It's a really nice view. And so here is a picture that I have that shows some of the bigger view, not as big as this one from the Kolbs, but you can see this part of the old trail and this part here. And of course, there's the new trail, new, it's not new to us really, but it didn't exist back then in 1914. And then here is a close-up of the Devil's Corkscrew, sort of more specifically. And then here is my corresponding views from 2003. And you can see here's this part again from before, and you can see this looping around, still visible. And then I've hiked through it, and you can follow it pretty much down at the bottom. It's a little bit of a mess, but you can follow it for most of the way through there without any trouble. I had a couple of pictures here that are the astronaut pictures that Kevin may have mentioned in an earlier presentation and that are in his book about the space training in northern Arizona. But I thought, I'm going to go ahead and repeat them. When he was trying to match up these pictures, there were a few that he wasn't sure about, and he passed them off to Bill Ferris. And there were still a few that he wasn't sure about, and he passed them off to me. And then I went and did a hike down to Phantom Ranch and back to match up the ones that they had. This was one of them, Gordon Cooper on a mule. And we knew it was Indian Garden, but that cliff in the background seemed a little bit weird because it doesn't seem like something you really notice very much, but I was able to match that up pretty well when I did that back in 2016. Here's one of Ed White, and this one is one where it's not a surprise that people wouldn't know of this site. This is the ruins in Garden Creek, apparently visited quite often back in the old days, 100 years ago or so, but not very much now, but they're still there and still in pretty good shape. And here's a picture that I replicated in 2016 of that site. This one had me confused a little bit because it's not very distinctive, but this is a cave below the in the red wall below Skeleton Point, as Kevin wrote in his book. And as I was coming up the Kaibab, I saw it, and it's like, oh yeah, of course, that's that spot. And it's a spot most people kind of are familiar with. When it's raining, you might duck in there out of the weather to wait it out. And then one last one was the fern fossil display on Cedar Ridge, which is sort of a little bit of an irony too, because most people that probably aren't stopping at Cedar Ridge don't know about it because they just continue on their way on the trail, and you have to actually sort of go out of your way to see it. It doesn't look the same as it did back in the 1960s, but you can see that it's still there, needing some TLC, I guess. And I think somebody had mentioned that there was some efforts to try to rehabilitate this particular exhibit. Moving over to Grandview, some of the pictures that are kind of interesting are of the bottom of the old Grandview Trail. This one is in Burton Holmes's Travelogues book, published in 1901. And I was down there in 2006 and was able to mostly match up the view. Can't really match up all these rocks that are in the way, but you can see this fen in the river, which is right at Vishnu Creek, and then the horizon, of course, matches up very well in both of these pictures. Here's a similar picture that's in George Wharton James's book, also basically titled At the Foot of the Grandview Trail. A little different view though, but you can still see there's that fen in the background and matches up pretty well with the picture I have. Although this picture here, I think the water level is quite a bit higher, because you can see that, for example, this part of the rock is right here. So we're looking at a big difference in the water flow. One of the ones that I was really interested in trying to match is this one. For years, I would forget where I saw it. It's this spring in Cottonwood. And the reason I would sort of forget where it was is because it's one of the stereoscope pictures I have that were published in 1903. And it's identified as the Cottonwood Spring. And it's got some barbed wire there and this big rock. And I figured I should be able to find this, especially since you can see in the background Wotan's Throne and Angel's Gate, although back then they had different names. And I was able to find it in 2020, but it's, you can see, kind of difficult to make out because of all the brush. But I went back there again last year, and the floods from the summer, the big heavy rains we got, washed a lot of stuff out, which benefited my picture anyway. And somebody's unfortunate fire a couple of years ago also burned down many of the trees. So as bad as that was, at least I'm able to match up this view of this spring in 2021 with the one from back in 1900. There's also a neat cave there around Grandview that George Wharton James published in his books, also in the stereoscope set that I've got. And he lit a bunch of candles and then left the cover off the photographic plate for like a couple hours, as long as the candles were burning, to get his picture. I didn't have to worry about that, of course, but was able to match that up after a few other visits there that I didn't have the same view. And then this one is also pretty interesting. There's the Grandview Hotel from the Library of Congress up on the rim. The only problem is that it is a fake. And Mike Quinn is the one that sort of brought that to our attention. And you can see another fake here, and it's not even put in the same place. And this fake is actually at the kiosk exhibit at Grandview Point. Identifies it as a 1902 picture of Grandview Hotel. Well, I actually went out there when I thought that was really the case and couldn't find a darn thing. And of course, it's not surprising because it's not really there. But here is a contemporary picture looking over from about the Grandview area. So if you go out from the Grandview Hotel site to the rim and look across to the east, that's pretty much what they're looking at here. Here's another picture from the Grandview area out on the rim near the hotel. I haven't been able to find those rocks exactly, but here is a view that matches up very well with the background and even a lot of the foreground. So a little bit more work and I might be able to nail that down a little bit more specifically. And then we go to the Hance Trail. This one popped up on the Facebook page a year or so ago, and there was some question about whether, because it says on Hance's Trail, maybe it meant the old trail. Well, it doesn't mean the old trail. We can tell from the view that it's not the old trail, but it got me interested in matching it up with a picture. And along the way, I was able to find two postcards of the same view that were colored in, and then you can see the backgrounds were altered, I guess some kind of geographic license in that regard to enhance that view. But in all three cases, you can see the two mule riders in front and the one up ahead that's actually from the picture. And then this is what I came up with when it was first published first posted up, and I said, well, look, that is Coronado Butte, and here's a connecting picture from the general area. But then in 2021, last year, I took a trip up to the South Rim, and I walked around until I could find the exact spot. Here's a little bump in the cliff. And of course, this banding you can see in both of these pictures as well. And this might be the same bush. I don't know how long these bushes last, but kind of interesting in that regard. And that's up at the top of the Coconino, where the trail flattens out for a bit before it descends down to the saddle. This is down in Hance Creek. This is Hance's cabin, and it's impossible to get a match of the cabin site specifically. It's all overgrown now. Apparently some flooding has washed out everything there, but you can see that the background here matches up pretty well. And it's the place where there's a little spring, which is where Hance's little cabin site was. This is down at the river. And then this one's also kind of interesting because you kind of think about, well, what's the view here? And I was able to match up the cliffs with the cliffs that are across the river from Hance Rapids when you're down there, even though you probably don't notice that particular part. And then I did a close-up because you can see that little white streak through there. And the geologist will have to tell us what that really is, but matches up perfectly with the old picture. Further up the river is this bypass where hikers are on a very narrow ledge. This is from Harvey's article in the Journal of Arizona History from 1976. And I have a nice duplicate picture of this of Chris Forsyth on the same little ledge from 2008. I got a couple of drawings from B.L. Young from the Walcott expedition in 1882-83. This one matches up well with the view from around Tanner. Really should be on the north side of the river because that's where Walcott and Young were, but they had hiked down the river down that far. And then this is a picture in Chuar Valley of the Chuar Lava Hill looking towards the river. And of course, another familiar picture, I think, for most people. This is at the Palisades from Lava Creek. This is a picture from Hillers in 1872. And then there is my picture from 2012. And then the last couple here out of Nankoweap. This is a picture Barry Goldwater took of when he was going to investigate this natural bridge. And he and another guy flew a helicopter in there. And here is my picture. And we can see, let's see, here is the natural bridge in both of these pictures. So about the same perspective. And then one last one that is one I really was interested in for a long time. I would see this picture, view in Grand Canyon, man is sitting on rock in upper right, Hillers, circa 1870s. And I kept thinking, this has got to be a picture we can place because we know the Grand Canyon. Well, after looking at it off and on and off and on and off and on, I realized that the picture was reversed. And once I did that, it fit into place. Oh yes, this is the view from Nankoweap. I was able to match up the general view pretty well. And then just a few months ago, was able to go up and find the exact spot. Well, I had found the spot where this rock is, but I was able to find the exact spot where I could actually duplicate this picture.
Wow, that's cool.
And say, okay, now we know where that picture is from. So.
Wow, that is so cool. I love that one. That's my favorite. That's so cool.
Now, how do I get out of this pen? Oh, here we go. There. So that is my eclectic mix of matched Grand Canyon pictures. I hope you found it kind of interesting and enjoyable. And there's still, of course, plenty more to try to match up in the future.
Dennis, that was brilliant.
Thanks.
That was really, really fun.
What do I have to do? Stop, share or something, or?
Yep, that's right. Up at the top, I think you can do that. Yep, well done. And we see you there, and that looks really good. What we're going to do now is anyone who has any questions, either put them in chat or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. And I've got some questions for you, Dennis. Do you pay any attention to the time of year or the time of day when you're trying to get your shot?
The short answer is no, and the long answer is no as well.
Okay.
It's really just a lucky coincidence, you know, like at Mystic Spring, I was there like the same time and I got the same shadows. But I wouldn't have gone there and then said, well, I have to wait to make it exactly the same. So it's usually just a happy coincidence.
Cool. Terry Cleland wants to know if this presentation tonight will be on the website. Yes, it will be on the Grand Canyon Historical Society website in the virtual outings section. We will post that up there in the next couple of days, so you can see this again over there. Are you becoming a little more sensitive, Dennis, to the changes in vegetation that you're seeing?
I certainly have noticed it, and it's, you know, it is to me interesting, maybe in a kind of a unorthodox sort of way, in that when I look at these old pictures, I don't see big trees, I don't see a lot of shade, I see a lot of arid stuff, you know, Indian Garden, Cottonwood Spring, and others. And it's like, yeah, we've taken for granted the relative luxuries of big cottonwood trees and the shade that we have today.
Yeah, I did find it most surprising that the cottonwoods at Indian Gardens, they're not there 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate why people would want to plant them there for shade, but they certainly weren't there then.
Well, and we know that Indian Garden was subject to a lot of flooding, right? We know Merrill Club's son, and was it son and father or something that died in that, and you go around there, and it is an interesting little aspect of history. I don't know if people recognize all the big rock walls that are there to prevent such a you know, calamity from happening again. And certainly that would be a reason why, you know, that's what it looked like 100 years ago.
Yeah, it is really interesting to see that change and kind of ponder that over time. Dick Brown has a question for you about the grainy photo at Grandview Point with the fellow and two women. He says that's from Scientific American, and was curious to know if the fellow there was Louis Boucher, and that you gave a great presentation.
Well, I don't know. A lot of these pictures don't identify who's in them. I think there were a couple that mentioned basses in them. And there might have been one where George Wharton James was in a picture, but yeah, as a general rule, usually they're unidentified.
Okay.
Tom, I think that is Louis Boucher.
Okay.
If it was hands, he would be straight up and down. You know, I mean, he'd be standing straight up, and that fellow is not.
Actually, Dennis, the fellow in the grainy picture, I think really is Louis Boucher, because the Scientific American article was all about him guiding some tourists down the trail.
Oh,
So,
cool.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So I think that it really is old Louis.
Well, next on my list of things to do is to actually read the articles that go with these old pictures.
So, Dennis, do you have any photographs that you're looking forward to trying to match in the future here?
Oh, yes, I do. I skipped a few slides at the end of my presentation because I knew I was running a little bit long. But one of the things that's bugged me for a while is Cape Horn, which appears to be at the top of the Coconino on the Bright Angel Trail and was part of the older trail that got rerouted to some extent. But I have a dozen pictures and postcards that show this Cape Horn, and I have a real hard time trying to match up any of the views.
Interesting. And which photographs have gotten away from you that bug you because you've been unable to match them?
There's another famous picture. It's Buffalo Bill and John Hance out on this rock with a bunch of other people, the part of some big entourage. And it's near the Hance area. And I can't seem to find that exact rock. I can find
I know right. Hey, I know right where it is.
the general view, and I've walked up and down the rim there, and I'm scouting around, and it's like, I know it's got to be here somewhere, and it's probably pretty close. But
Dennis, you need to get together.
There's a lot more vegetation now,
You need to
right there at that rock.
get together
Yeah.
with Shane. He knows right where it is.
yes.
And go out and capture that one.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Dennis tonight?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks.
Well, this has been really lovely, Dennis. Thank you so very, very much. Before everyone scatters, same time, same place, second Tuesday of every month. Next month, Cindy Stafford is going to be presenting on submerged memories. Dick Sprang recalls the Height Ferry, and that ought to be a lot of fun. So we look forward to seeing you all there then. And Dennis, thank you so much again. I really appreciate your taking the time out tonight. Thank you all, everyone, for coming out to enjoy this. And I hope you all have a good evening tonight. And that will conclude our presentation.
Thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dennis.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.